You're tuned in to More Living with Jim Brogan, broadcast live from the Brogan Financial Studios at News Talk 98.7, where old-fashioned values, expert knowledge, and genuine understanding come together to give you the retirement straight talk you deserve. Jim's a former National Advisor of the Year recipient and a financial educator, and he's here today to talk about how you can live out the best years of your life. Jim and the Brogan Financial team have been helping retirees and pre-retirees across the Southeast for over 20 years in their pursuit of financial independence. You can reach them during the week at 865-862-6800. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn, because More Living with Jim Brogan starts now.
Welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI, and we're honored today to highlight one of our community's most cherished institutions, the Love Kitchen. Believe it or not, 40 years ago today, on Valentine's Day 1986, is when this got started. And joining us in studio today are two incredible leaders carrying forward the legacy of founders Ellen and Helen, and that is Executive Director of the Love Kitchen, Martin, and President of the Board, Ernie. And they're here to share the story behind this remarkable organization, the impact of its mission, how they continue serving thousands in our community with dignity, passion, and love. So it's a conversation about service, about legacy, and the power of showing up for one another. So we're going to kind of dive right in here. So, again, we've got Ernie Roberts. He's president of the board, and we've got Martin Riggins. He's the executive director. And as I said, it started 40 years ago today, right? I mean, when we were...
To the day.
So when we were talking about what shows we could have in the month of February, and we realized this was on Valentine's Day, and we always do a heart health show because it's, Heart Health Month, and we're doing that next week.
Good, yeah.
But then we were like, oh, man, we got to have on the Love Kitchen. So we appreciate y'all having on. So talk about the birth of the Love Kitchen. And, I mean, it seems obvious, but it started on Valentine's Day. So is that where the name comes from? Tell us a little bit about the founding side of this.
I think with the Love Kitchen itself, that I can't honestly say that was it, but I'm sure it certainly went along with Valentine's Day. And the two sisters, Helen and Ellen, just exemplified love, love, love out of it. You could just see it anytime. First time I met them, it was like hug on both sides, and I'm going like, I was a little overwhelmed, But the story was, that they just poured out. They really, anyone was a welcome stranger, a new person in their lives and stuff. They were always awesome about that. And the fact that it happened, it was probably without any fanfare, because they may have had, I don't know, Martin, how many was about, did they do less
22.
I was going to say 22 meals.
They served.
22 meals the very first day in 1986.
And now it's grown, and their vision. And the story goes, Helen went and woke up Ellen because God had appeared to her in a dream. She said, sis, we're going to feed people. And Ellen, of course, Ellen was kind of the more the nuts and bolts person, says, go back to bed, sis, it's late, whatever. So, but they, that's kind of the story they would tell, about how they got the thing going. But Helen had that vision, and they retired. They both had been nurses. They were both retired at that time.
So their inspiration was, we just want to feed and help people.
And they felt like, God was pushing them, because it's been a faith-based organization.
Yes, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So the word love, the title, the Love Kitchen, I mean, it is kind of ironic. It started on Valentine's Day, but the reality is that's what their lives were about.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And Martin can vouch for that, too. I was going to say, Martin, you can take
Martin,
away a little. I'm kind of hogging the mic here.
Martin, tell us about your journey and how long have you been with the Love Kitchen as executive director?
Well, as executive director, officially, I think it was probably about August of 2022, but in the beginning of, or the end of late 2021, the beginning of 2022 is when I kind of started doing it. My brother, Patrick Riggins, who used to have a show here on 98.7, he was the previous executive director and board president and everything, and we lost him in December of 2021 to a heart attack. And
I'm sorry.
I kind of, one of the ladies on the board said, hey, can you come over and help us? And I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. And so I went over there and I sat down at Patrick's computer and I tried to figure out how he did what he did. And after about 6 or 8 months, the board said, "Hey, would you like to be the executive director?" And I said, "Sure." And that's how I'm here. But now, I knew the sisters way back when, and I would help Patrick out on informal ways, since back 2007, 2008 at least. And he would say, "Can you come help me do this or that?" I've mopped the floors there. I've mowed the yard. I've been a janitor. I've been a fix-it guy. I've done it all down there. And, it kind of just gets into your blood after a while. And one of the ladies on the board I was referring to, Susan, she said, "Martin, the Love Kitchen sucks you in." And it does. As you start coming down there and going down there more and more, you see what's going on. You see what happens every day. You see the
impact.
Yes. And, you want to stay with it.
And Ernie, how long have you been? Tell about a little bit about your journey.
Really, my journey there was a very much, I don't know, more random maybe feel per se that I wound up dropping in. I'd heard about Helen and Ellen. I remember Jackie Brown at the News Sentinel. I worked with the Empty Stocking Fund, still do. But they, when Jackie would talk about, well, we're going to keep this because whatever's left over from our distribution, because not everything was picked up on distribution day, and we had to move out of the Jacob building pretty quick. She said, "We'll deliver that to the Love Kitchen." That's the Love Kitchen. And that's where I first had my first hearing of the words. And then I heard a little bit about Helen and Ellen, but I'd never met them. So I go over, I was going to be an interim 2 or 3 weeks music director at Fifth Avenue Baptist Church.
So you're a musician by trade.
I sing little,
Because my undergraduate degree was music education. Yeah, my wife and I met singing. So
well, I will say also that I'm going to put in a quick plug. Cheap, here it is. But I'm right now singing with Barbara Seville. I'm in the men's chorus for Barbara Seville with the Knoxville Opera Company.
Great.
Playing next weekend. So life is a little busy
that's
right
great.
now. But back to the thing, I was asked to come in and to help them out. And that was all random, too, because the lady Jean Minot at Fifth Avenue Baptist Church happened to be at a cookout that my mom and my aunt, and she was a friend of my aunt. Mom didn't know her, but she brought her along for a July 4th cookout. And that's where I met them. And she said, "How would you like to? We need an interim music person." I'm going all of a sudden, "What? Yeah, you just met me here, whatever." So anyway, that's where I met Helen and Ellen. Helen was in the choir. Ellen was out front. And so at the end of the service, they both, wanted to get a hug. And, that's just the way they were, when they met you and they like you, whatever. And I guess I was likable. Decent enough. So it was interesting because it took me probably a year or two before I ever even went into Love Kitchen. I had worked with Helen, both of them at church. And I stayed at church, by the way. I'm still there at Fifth Avenue Baptist Church, And that's what the longest interim position probably ever happened because it was about, I think, 2002, 2003, because it was after 9/11 it happened in 2001.
So you've been involved for quite some time.
So I've been there with them. And then a couple of years later, I started just volunteering. I'll be honest with you, I can't remember when they asked me to be on the board, and then here I am now. So the journey, like I said, was in many ways random, but it's like Martin said, it sucks you in once you get there because I would be working on Wednesday afternoons, helping with meals, and then I'd go off and rearrange stockroom because we were always having cans and stuff brought in that needed to be organized and put where it was. So that was one of my jobs too. Plus, it was just kind of good therapy for me to get off and not have to be, it was one of those things you're not, what I'm saying? It's sort of like you just go in, it's like you're almost on autopilot, but it was a calming down after a work day. Because I'm a teacher by trade, okay? So, and I don't teach music; I do math.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Math guy.
Yeah,
and a lot of people
my name for a while.
Well, and actually, that's interesting. A lot of people don't know that musicians usually are pretty good at math because of the way the scales are, and a lot of people don't realize that.
The theory of music is patterns.
It is.
Such. So
it's very mathematical. Okay, so 40 years ago today, 22 meals. Talk about the scope and the impact today. Tell us about the Love Kitchen and how much it impacts the community. Numbers of meals, whatever you like to share in terms of, give us an idea of how much it's grown and the impact it's making.
Well, I can tell you that in 2025, we provided a total of 155,319 meals, all at no charge to the people that we do homebound, which is we go every Thursday and we deliver a tower of 7 meals to between 280 and 300 people. It depends on how many are on that week. And then every Wednesday and Thursday, we serve lunch to anyone that shows up at 12:30 sharp. And
it's pretty much no questions asked, right? I mean, it's really
no
cool. I mean,
asked.
it's just like we're going to serve lunch.
That is correct.
We've got it there. There's no time to ask questions. And sometimes we have to prepare a little bit more because we have more show up than what we expect.
Yeah, the homebound you do need to qualify for because otherwise we would just be overwhelmed.
Sure.
But beyond that, if you show up at the kitchen, we will feed you. And then we also provide food to 6 other organizations at no charge to them, where we'll just provide them pans of food. And at the end of the day, that puts us in the neighborhood of 3,000 meals a week that we're providing to these other organizations, as well as anybody that shows up to the kitchen, as well as the people we deliver to. So in 2024, we did 146,000 or so meals, and so we had about a 10% increase. But that came from the fact that we've started distributing these meals to these other organizations that allow them to then distribute it out. So we don't even have to they don't have to come necessarily to the kitchen, and you still may be eating Love Kitchen food.
So one thing that's interesting to me is, there's some great charitable organizations here in East Tennessee. So talk about how, I think of we have some really good organizations that serve homeless people. We have some really good ones that provide food. Mm-hmm. Talk about how you all coordinate all that stuff.
Well, we have basically it's a 4-day operation.
Like I would imagine you work very closely with CARM.
We do,
yes. Mm-hmm.
I go every Monday, and CARM drives around and picks up all the excess Chick-fil-A patties and such like that the Chick-fil-A doesn't have. And that was actually started by the guy that owned a franchise in Maryville. And now it's nationwide.
A Chick-fil-A franchise.
Yes, and I thought that was great that it actually started in this area. But so they go around and they pick up the excess. And then on Mondays, I go and they give me their excess. And we take that and we oftentimes shred it up, and our chef uses it in white chicken chili. She uses it in making barbecue that you would swear was beef barbecue or pork barbecue, but it is not. It is made from shredded
incredible
Chick-fil-A.
Chicken salad.
Yes, she does that as well.
Whoa. Fried chicken salad, which is amazing.
And so then after that, anything that we have excess, we give to another organization called Granger County Baptist Association. So all of these things, we will call them, Granger County, when we have excess. CARM will call me and say, hey, we've got this. Can you use it? So a lot of cooperative communication.
Yes. I don't think communication would be so important.
It is. And, we've not signed a contract with any of them. It's just kind of like call them up on the phone. Hey, do you want this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they come down. Granger County comes down every Wednesday with a box truck, and we load them up with the stuff that we don't need. And they take it up there and they serve thousands of people up there as well. So, it's the way that we all coordinate and everything. It was just organic, the way it all just kind of comes together. It works extraordinarily well, believe it or not.
Valentine's Day, 1986. That's when the Love Kitchen was birthed. And we have them with us in studio, their current president and executive director. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about their impact. I do want to also talk to them about, the impact not only that they've seen, but if Helen and Ellen could walk in the Love Kitchen today, how would they be impacted by the scope of the ministry? So stay with us. This is More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We're the show where we explore the people, the ideas, and organizations that make Knoxville such a special place to call home. And one of those real fixtures in the Knoxville community is the Love Kitchen. They're with us today. It's 40 years ago today that they got their start with 22 meals that Helen and Ellen served on that day 40 years ago. Ernie, how would, if Helen and Ellen could walked in the Love Kitchen today, what moment, practice, what tradition, what do you think would make them smile the most?
I think they would, and Martin and I have talked about it a little bit just a few minutes ago here, and refresh our memories and such. But their line so many times, whenever they received something, you don't know how many people this will feed, or what, that was one thing, or how many people, this will feed so many people. And I think that would be their first thing, is that we are still feeding people and able to do so.
They never really got away from the core, right?
No, and their core values were, their father had taught them these, and one was
there is three main core values, right?
3 main core values, right? There is but one Father, and that is the Heavenly Father. There is one race, that is the human race, and the third was, do not take the last piece of bread or food on the table, because you never know who is going to come by in need of it. That was the 3 basic prongs. I've paraphrased it a little bit probably there. And I have to admit, the third came to haunt me one night on Christmas night at my house in my neighborhood. I had just had our family Christmas, everybody gone, their ways, and knock, knock, knock at the door. And I have no idea who the stranger was, but I had some food, or like a sandwich or something, was able to give to him. And before I could turn around, and I gave, I think, some sort of something to drink or whatever. Before I got back, he had left on back, walking into the fog, so to speak. And I was going, that reminded me, that statement right there, you never know when someone's going to come by.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And that was one of those and to be Christmas night, it was just, there was really a touching moment for me. And it was a private moment. I was there. It was my own,
Yeah, I couldn't put myself in their shoes, but, if I did something similar 40 years ago, and then I passed away and I came back, I think I would be extremely encouraged that the really the core values, the mission, everything the Love Kitchen does has not lost that foundation has stayed the same.
And over the years, and it's helpful, we've developed the team members. Each day has a team. Martin can vouch for this because he's on the inside of it on the day-to-day. But you've got a group that Monday has cohesed as a team. They love working with each other. They love being there. It's hard. I don't want to turn away your volunteers, because we always want to have some, because some people can't show up every day and all that. But those folks have gotten used to work, and they really keep the duties that go on. He can tell you a little bit of what we do on those days, streamline. The Tuesday crew, very tight group also. I was very impressed. And there's a Wednesday crew and a Thursday crew, and they all love each other. They all get along with each other. And so to me, that's a very important aspect. There again, the Love Kitchen coming together.
Yeah, I'll have to say, talking to both of you, there's like this magnetic, almost infectious enthusiasm that's extremely refreshing. Martin, talk about your role and then the impact you have personally seen firsthand of how it impacts lives.
I will do that. I want to jump back because, when you talked about Helen and Ellen and how they would react, that reminded me that when they were getting older and their health was kind of failing and such, they asked Patrick, they said, will you promise to keep the Love Kitchen going after we're gone? And he did promise to do that, and he did. And Patrick and I were close, and so I've taken that on, and I think Ernie would probably agree with that's kind of what it was. Is this whole thing is bigger than Ernie or me or Patrick or any of us. This Love Kitchen was started, and they made this huge impact, and they continue to make it. They're no longer with us, and yet this thing that they started, I tell people all the time, they started something special with the Love Kitchen. When you come in there, and like Ernie was saying, you come in there on a day, and you've got people that are in there. They're there because they're there to help people. Now, most of our volunteers are either retirees or student age, but they're there because they, like you said, they see that impact of what you do. When you see a stack of 600 trays, that's going to be just one of the 3 meals that our chef cooks that week. That we count those out, and so you see this stack, and then when the food that we serve, you see just an entire walk-in refrigerator full of meals. In the neighborhood of 2,500 to, we averaged so far this year a little over 2,900 meals a week is what we have. And so when you see that, a walk-in refrigerator just full of meals, and then into the day Thursday, gone.
Yeah.
We've got about 30 drivers that are all volunteers that come in and they run their route on Thursday, and they deliver to what it becomes your people. They get attached to the people that they deliver to, and they feel it when sometimes you go and you deliver and you knock on the door and there's no answer, but the neighbor comes out and said, well, they died Sunday. That's happened to me when I was delivering. That happens sometimes. And, you've gotten to know these people because you've delivered to them enough. And so when the lady that kind of arranges our drivers tries to make a route a little easier, maybe it's getting a little big, they're like, no, I want to deliver to my people. We've got one guy that drives a Mini. Now, it's a 4-door Mini, but he delivers 31 towers. He delivers to 31 people. And most of our routes are 8 to 10. But he wants that, and do you want us to knock that down? No, I want to deliver to my people.
It. So, I mean, volunteer help in any charitable organization is so critically important. Can you just expand on that a little bit? I mean, before you do, one thing I'll talk about the power of giving. And, yeah, some of that is financial. Some of it is giving our time and our talents. But when we do all that, what it does is, number one, it helps keep us. Why I think that's such a critical part of a financial plan is it gives us perspective. In this society, we're so inundated with materialism and images and things like that, and it gives us a life money perspective, like a balance. But when you get involved, so just talk about the impact. I mean, you kind of already have, but how dependent are you on volunteers in your organization?
Well, very much so. And in fact, there are times when we have a illness or someone is unable to make it, Kelly, our driver coordinator, will give me a text and say, "Hey, can you drive tomorrow? Can you drive today?" And if I can, I'll fill in. And it's interesting when I go there to those homes, it's kind of like they look at me and say, "Well, you're not the same. They'll be back. I'm sorry." Or the other one that's the famous line is because I've just gotten the word that I need to do it, and I'm running behind, or I'm on my own schedule to get there. Whatever. And I finally get there. You're late. You're all are late. I said, "I'm sorry. I'm the substitute." So yeah. I don't give them any. Like a president of the board or anything like. No, it's just I'm there. I'm there to take. But I see that they do have that relationship with our drivers and such. And Kelly also has the phrase Jehovah Jireh, God provides. And she has told me times that she'll come in and she'd be 3 short at the beginning of that day, or 4 drivers short, and through all these miracles of God. And I see miracles every day at the Love Kitchen or read about them. And every time I go to as I call it, the bank, our post office, I see miracles because here's the donations that, we don't go out and really solicit. We send one letter out during a year. But people have come to a point they include us in monthly giving. You're talking about the financial part of it. It's just amazing. It just, like I say, I see miracles every day I go to that post office.
The Love Kitchen has always emphasized serving with dignity. So how do you ensure every meal and every interaction reflects that core value?
Our chef takes every meal personally, and she has said that if she would not eat it, she will not put it out the door. And so
I think that's a great word right there.
Well, I mean, I am blown away every week with what she does. We pick up from Costco 6 days a week, and excess food, stuff like that they don't need, excess water that we use to serve for lunch. And what she does is she takes all these disparate ingredients, sets them back in the freezer until she's got enough to make something. And then she makes an Alfredo out of macaroni and cheese that we get from Costco. And it's incredible what she does. She takes this, she's likened it to, there's a show called Chopped that she says that it's like, but because she has to make something up from what she has. And, but as far as the dignity goes, that's part of it. That's the big part of it. And I should have brought a picture of our poster that shows the food that we serve because she cooks real turkeys for Thanksgiving. She cooks real ham for Christmas.
That's great.
This is not industrial food. You have in your mind a bowl of soup, probably in a cheese sandwich. That is not what
they
serve.
get. No.
Yeah, they're getting good quality meals.
Yes, sir.
We're visiting with the Love Kitchen, a real fixture here in Knoxville, Tennessee, for 40 years. When we come back, we'll have more about their impact and about food insecurity and how that's changed in Knoxville and East Tennessee over the last 10 to 20 years. We'll also have our dollars and cents segment. How healthy is the stock market? As the Dow in the last week clicked over 50,000. And what can we learn by looking at the S&P 500? What is the danger of looking at the S&P 500? And what can we learn from that? So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm Jim Brogan, and we're visiting with the Love Kitchen. Been a fixture in Knoxville for 40 years. Valentine's Day 1986. Before we get back to our guest from the Love Kitchen, it is time for Dollars and Cents.
Want to be sure you are getting the most out of your retirement? For all the years of your retirement? That's the primary goal of More Living with Jim Brogan and our Dollars and Cents segment, where we provide you with an important financial tip that will help positively impact the quality of your life in retirement. And now, here's Jim with this week's Dollars and Cents tip.
How healthy is the stock market? You know, here in the last little bit, we saw the Dow click over 50,000. President Trump came out and said that by the end of his term, it'll click over 100,000. I don't know that I see that, but you know, that's what he says. But, you know, I get asked a lot of times, you know, God, can it keep going up, blah, blah, blah. And it's been choppy the last week or two, certainly. But I want to use the S&P 500 and talk about that index and what we can learn from it and what we have to be careful about. You know, the S&P 500 is an index made up of 500 of the largest U.S. stocks. But that can be a little bit misleading in a couple of ways. One, every company does not have an equal impact on the movement of that index. It's not 1/500th each. In other words, the larger the company is, the more it impacts the movement of that index. It's what's called a weighted average index. And so what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years is the Magnificent Seven that you hear talked about so much. You know, that's the big, you know, NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, Apple, those big technology companies. They have gotten so massively big that they're driving most of the movement of the index. Believe it or not, the top 10 companies in the S&P 500, the largest 10, drive 40% of the index. And we have had times in the last 2 or 3 years where the S&P 500 was up a good bit. But if you called out the 7 companies that make out the Mag 7, all the other 493 stocks were just kind of clicking along with hadn't really made any money in terms of the stock appreciation. More like a zero return, where the Mag 7 was having such a great run that it was showing a very nice return in the S&P 500. So first, you have to be, there was an article in New York Times last weekend that said, how safe is the S&P 500? And what it postured is it's not as safe and diversified as it used to be because you've got these big companies driving it. We have to also understand that the S&P 500, I say the largest 500 companies, about half those stocks are mid-cap stocks. So it's really, with that weighted benefit, it's very top-heavy. And so when we look at where we are today, it's interesting because now we're seeing things shift a little bit. We're seeing the earnings and the projections for the Mag 7 stocks start to recede a little bit, and we're starting to see more optimism among the other 493 stocks. Now, what does that mean for 2026? Who knows? I mean, markets are choppy. They're unpredictable. In a typical year, we see a market correction of 10 to 15%. That's just average. And that's, a typical correction is healthy for markets. The key here is, over time, in our next 10 or 15 years, you need to be growing investments above and beyond the rate of inflation. And I think that's going to be critically important. We're seeing very good economic growth. They're predicting GDP growth this year, 5.7%. Risk assets over time provide the best opportunity to beat inflation. However, in the short term, they're completely unpredictable. So it's just critically important to realize when we invest, are you an investor or speculator? If your investments, you're worried about what they do the next 6 months, that's not investing, that's speculating. We just don't know. So there's a huge difference. That means it doesn't mean you can't speculate on just a small piece of your money. But as investors, we have got to understand that the more diverse and equity-based our investment plan is, the more we need time on our side. And so we shouldn't be thinking about where we're going to be in 3 or 4 months. That means we need safe and stability in our assets that provide short-term access to money and income. So just be careful with S&P 500 and what we can learn from that, and be sure that you have the true, proper diversification where you're not too overhedged in one sector of the industry.
That's our Dollars and Cents segment for this week. You can find this week's Dollars and Cents segment and others by visiting BroganFinancial.com.
Check us out on BroganFinancial.com. We got lots of resources there. If you click on resources, you can pull up, we've got blogs, we've got articles, we've got white papers you can download. We have, when you click on resources, you can also click on classes. And we got my full spring schedule, both through the University of Tennessee Business and Community Outreach and also Pellissippi State's Adult Outreach. You can find our full schedule there and click to find out more information, download a syllabus, and register for those classes. Most of the classes the remainder of the spring are one-night classes, income planning, specifically in retirement, or tax planning. We do have one 2-part class at Pellissippi that's the financial, thrive financially in retirement. So go check out all that. We try to put lots of resources in our website so that you can make informed and prudent decisions that can impact the quality of your life. Today is Valentine's Day, and 40 years ago today, the Love Kitchen was birthed, and it has made such a tremendous impact on the community. Let's talk about food insecurity. It looks different today than it did 10 or 20 years ago. How have the needs of the East Tennessee community changed, and how has the Love Kitchen adapted?
Well, I can tell you, I've only been doing this, like we talked about, just a few years. But again, I can tell you, between 2024 and 2025, we served about 10% more meals than prior to that, between those two. I don't have records going back 40 years or anything like that. I'm kind of a spreadsheet guy and a numbers guy, and so I keep all of that stuff. But it certainly looks like,
I have to mention, you're quite talkative for a big numbers guy.
He's learned how to be talkative.
Yeah.
He was really more of a shy type person.
Was he really?
I think so.
Well, most numbers guys
he's coming to his own. He's really, he's grown into the job, and he does a wonderful job. He really does.
There was a funny story, if you permit me a sidebar for a second, was that this lady one time said, "Do you have a 30-second elevator speech?" I said, "No. I can talk to you for several minutes about it, but I don't have 30 seconds because, as you see, there's just so much that goes along with it." But I've lost my train of thought. What was your question?
Well, it was about food insecurity and how the East Tennessee community has changed over the last 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, I think, like I said, if you look, I don't have numbers for that. However, if you look just kind of around in the Knoxville area, it certainly looks like there's a lot more than there used to be as far as people that you see that appear to be needy. There's
a lot of food insecurity, and I know a couple months ago we had on Second Harvest, and they had some more data on food insecurity, and it's just great ministry as well, which I'd imagine you all are very cooperative with them too.
We do.
Mm-hmm. We have.
So I just think it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's interesting in Knoxville because as Knoxville expands and into more and more counties and becomes more populated, you still drive 15, 20 miles from Knoxville, and you're in very rural America.
Yes, on pretty much all sides.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of food insecurity in rural America, right? So when you look at the tremendous growth the last 20 years, are there any specific milestones that you think would trademark this growth? I mean, I know you said 155,000 meals.
Well, and COVID, of course, we say that COVID changed everything, and it really has in a lot of respects. I think I feel like I do, especially in the East Knoxville area, I see more churches that have food pantries, but they're not necessarily feeding. I think Magnolia Methodist does one night of the week. They have a feeding or something of that nature. They're on Magnolia, obviously, but their church takes in on that. But some of these who are churches or either small groups, community groups that start a food pantry, their hours may be irregular, but they're there, and they have, or some of them have a set day but you got to remember this problem exists 52 weeks of the year, and that's one thing about the Love Kitchen thing. We have a schedule Monday through Thursday every week, whether it's Christmas week, whether it's Thanksgiving. We are, holidays, summer, whatever. We have that obligation to the folks who are recipients. And it's like that makes me always kind of nervous, And when we lost Patrick, it was all of a sudden, the reason I'm president of the board is because I was vice president when Patrick passed away. And I'm going like, it was so funny. It wasn't funny, but I mean, all of a sudden I'm looking back at it. I'm going like, I took on the vice president role because I wouldn't have to worry about things and all. And so Patrick was the executive director as well as the president of the board. And all of a sudden they're looking, Ernie, what do we do now? I'm going like, what do you mean, Ernie, what do we do now? And so when Martin came along, it was awesome. Although it took about, like you said, it was 6-7 months or different time. I can't remember the exact time frame, but that was, it was a welcome godsend when he said yes and was willing to come in and take care of that. But I'm going back and saying that, things each year is kind of different, but COVID really sent a lot of shockwaves, I think, through community. And it also changed the way a lot of things were done.
Yeah, and it caused some adaptation that frankly has maybe improved things. Coming out of that, we learn to do things more efficiently in many ways.
I totally agree on that. That's one thing I feel like we have every day. Our job tasks have become very well-oiled machines.
Yes.
They already were productive. Don't get me wrong. They were already doing a great job, but it's just like it's really come into its own, and Martin keeps facilitating them. They run very well every day. Those things, they're basically done. I remember days when I first started volunteering there. We might be there sometimes till even close to midnight. And now 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our volunteers get in there. They have a job to do. They're there for 3 to 4 hours. They work very hard, and then it's all ready to go for the next shift the next day.
We're speaking with the Love Kitchen. That's Ernie Roberts. He's president of the board. We've also got Martin Riggins in studio with us. He's executive director. When we come back, I just really want to talk about challenges the Love Kitchen faces, how we can get involved in the community to help such a great organization. So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. On this Valentine's Day, 2026, we're visiting with the Love Kitchen, which was started Valentine's Day 1986, 4 years ago. And we've got on Ernie Roberts, president of the board, and Martin Riggins, executive director of the Love Kitchen. And since we've had more and more food insecurity, more and more demand for meals over the years, what are the biggest challenges the Love Kitchen faces in meeting the rising need?
Well, honestly, we are very blessed. The people of Knoxville have supported the Love Kitchen through the years, and we've been able to be very careful with the money. I've told people I can step on a penny and make it scream, and everybody down there.
That's a great word.
That, because it's important because the Love Kitchen does not solicit, nor do we accept any taxpayer funding.
True.
So it's all just donors that have seen the kitchen and have heard of it and believe in our mission. So honestly, the biggest, hardest thing for us is in the summertime when some of our drivers start going on vacation and, that type of thing. But
the money side, I think many charities underestimate the importance of fiscal responsibility. You touch on that?
Absolutely. Because as I tell people, they ask me, can I bring you cans? Absolutely. You can. We'll use them. But I cannot pay my KUB bill with cans. And our bill averages between $1,200 and $1,600 a month. And so that's a fair amount of money to come up with every single month. And so I know, and then, at some point you're going to have a freezer go out. And I've had that
happen. The repair work is pricey.
Yeah. And so I replace an evaporator, and that's $5,000. Fortunately, we've saved through the years, and we've put this stuff back for these unanticipated costs that can come up. And so we're in a good position to where we can do that because we've been careful, and then because the Knoxville community is extraordinarily generous to us.
And it's not just Knoxville. We get donations from outlying areas, outlying states. I mean, it's crazy the impact.
Nothing beats the volunteer stage.
Hey, I agree.
Right.
And it's a wonderful experience to go, and that's why I say it's like a miracle God provides every time I go to the post office and pick up all these checks. We also have a lot of people that donate online. So putting it together, we just feel very, as Martin said, we are very blessed.
Beyond meals, what types of other support does the Love Kitchen provide that people might need to know about?
It is going to be primarily meals. However, if someone calls us up, we can make an emergency food box, which is, of course, still just food. So we have an unofficial, there's a lady from the neighborhood, and she comes down, and people will bring clothes down, and take to her house, and I will set up. She'll tell me how many tables she wants, and I'll move my car out of her way, and I'll either set up 4 or 5 tables, and she will bring the clothes down that our volunteers have brought to her, that other people have brought to her, and she will lay them out and let people just have them. Because what has happened is I've had people tell me, I don't want to donate them somewhere because they're going to sell them. I want people to have these clothes. And so I said, well, okay. And so this thing just kind of came about on its own. Like I said, this just kind of Jehovah Jireh type thing. The
very
lady
organic
from the neighborhood said, I want to do that. And I said, cool.
So how can the people of Knoxville get involved and help? Find out more about the Love Kitchen.
TheLoveKitchen.org is our website. You can go there. You can get our phone number, which is 546, right out of my head, 8248. And
good job, Mark.
So 546-8248.
With area code 865, of course.
Yes,
of course.
So, but if that's incorrect, because I'm on the air, I've screwed it up.
But thelovekitchen.org
is absolutely correct. So you can go on there, you can hit things that says get involved. If you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, you can click the donate button. All of that is available on there, as long with a history of the Love Kitchen and how it came about and how the sisters started. If you're curious about any of that.
That's great information. Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing your heart, the history of the organization, the remarkable work that's happening right here in Knoxville. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I'd imagine you have a busy day today, but you came in this morning to visit with our listeners, so thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
And a happy Valentine's Day full of love to everybody.
That's a great word. That's a great word. So, Helen and Ellen's legacy with the Love Kitchen, it lives on through every meal, every volunteer, and every act of compassion that crosses their doorway. So if you'd like to support the mission, whether by giving time or resources or simply spread the word, go to thelovekitchen.org, thelovekitchen.org, find out more information. Today we've been discussing food security and ministry and a greater community, because a greater community provides for more living so you can live the best years of your life your way. Many thanks to Wayne for engineering the show. Many thanks to Mary Caroline for producing the show, and also to Ellie for helping with the show. You've been listening to More Living with Jim Brogan. Check us out online, broganfinancial.com. If you click on resources, then you can pull up all of our upcoming classes through both the University of Tennessee and Pellissippi State Adult Education one-night classes. Have a great weekend. Happy Valentine's Day as you've been listening to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
The views expressed by Jim Brogan and his guests are not that of Cumulus Media. Any discussion of financial, legal, and tax planning strategies is not intended to be individualized advice and is general in nature. Always consult with your advisor for advice specific to your needs. This program's content does not represent a recommendation of any particular security, strategy, or investment by Jim Brogan or Brogan Financial Incorporated.